Hello, my lovely people, and a very warm welcome back to The Library is Open. So I hope you brought your library card, my darlings. Rubbish tongue pop. It's never got better, but I think a level of consistency is important. So I realised I always wear like mustard on this channel when I'm filming, and maybe people think I don't wash my clothes. I absolutely do wash my clothes. I have quite a varied wardrobe, but it just so happens that every time I'm filming I'm wearing mustard. Oh, it smells so good. Not as good as books, but you know. There you go. That proves I washed it. No shade on anyone who doesn't wash their clothes. If you don't, cool, go with it. Why not? If it works for you. I'm gonna take my specs off actually because I can see the ring light reflected in my eyes. So today I thought to kind of break up the pattern. I thought, what have I not done for a while on this channel? And I thought, you know what I haven't done? I haven't done a haul. And I like a haul. I like watching other people's book hauls, see what they've got hold of, see what's just like entered their never-ending TBR. Very guilty of that. But I quite like to watch them, so I flatter myself that you might as well. So I would like to preface this by saying there are quite a few books here. And this is a kind of collective haul, so this is not something, or rather some things I've bought in a very short space of time. This is over quite a long period of time, and I just haven't had chance to talk about them on the channel yet, so hopefully that comes across. So without further ado, shall we just jump on in and see what literary tomes have entered my home? Little rhyme there. Some of these as well will not necessarily be things that I have physical copies of, so I'll just talk about them if that's applicable. I think it might be for this video, but if not, just forget I said that. Okay. So the first one is, I mentioned this, I think, before on the channel, but it's finally been published now, and I've managed to get hold of it, is Nighthawking by Russ Thomas, which is the follow-up to Fire Watching, which I have vlogged about before. So this is Adam Tyler, the police detective in Sheffield, and this is the sort of second book in what I'm assuming is going to be an ongoing series. What I love about this is, well, that's beautiful, isn't it? Signed by the author. But also I love the sort of concept of a queer northern character detective, sort of solving very kind of contemporary crimes. So it feels very sort of, that was rude, wasn't it? Did you hear that? Very sort of contemporary crimes in a sort of, 2021 landscape, although there is no mention of the pandemic, which makes me think it was written, or rather completed before, which is fine. Yeah, I just really like the sort of mix of cozy, modern that exists in this series, because it's not overly cozy, but there are elements of the coziness. Yeah, they're just characters that I really enjoy spending time with, so this is great, and smells fabulous too. So that's Nighthawking. What else have we got? Where should we go now? Oh, okay, yeah. Another one I've talked about on the channel before that has recently been published is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. Looks like that, beautiful cover. And again, beautiful fly pages. That's stunning, isn't it? And this is basically a retelling of the story of Ariadne, placing her at the kind of centre of the action as opposed to being a peripheral character in Greek myth, which she often has been in the past. I read a book last year, I can't remember what it was called. Was it Antigone Rising, I think, that sort of talked about how a lot of the female characters are relegated to kind of supporting roles, or what we call walk-ons in acting. And this one kind of puts her into the story of Theseus and the Minotaur, but as though she is the star of the story as opposed to just a bit part player. I have a big soft spot for Greek myth and legend. Well, not just Greek, actually, many kinds of legends and folklore and, mythological stories. I find them fascinating, both the differences and the shared characteristics across different cultures. So there's that, which is fab. What else have I bought? Oh, this one's a slightly contentious one, which is the reason I bought it, because I love a bit of controversy. This is Bear by Marian Engel, which is a Canadian book that has recently been republished after, when was it originally brought out? 76. So this is about a librarian called Lou, who works at a heritage centre, and she ends up going to a remote island to inventory a late colonel's estate, and while she's there, she encounters and becomes, from what I can gather, a little bit obsessed with a bear that lives in the vicinity. And I don't want to sort of spoil it or sort of preempt it, but I believe there's something about a growing relationship of sorts between her and the bear, and, you know, an understanding of you know, that kind of animal way of living versus the human way of living, and so on and so forth. And it does say it's controversial, so I'm not exactly sure what that's going to mean. But I am intrigued nonetheless, irrespective of kind of moral or ethical thoughts about that. So I want to see what that's all about. What we got next? Oh yes, the new Anthony Quinn, London Burning, which is, I'm not 100% sure what this is about. I know it's set, I think, during the punk era in London. Yes, it is. It's about a policewoman called Vicky Tress who becomes involved in corruption in CID, also about an ambitious reporter and an Irish academic. Oh, and also a theatre impresario who are sort of stuck deep in personal and political mires. They meet and affect the course of each other's lives profoundly in a capital city which is beset by strikes and trade union action and so on and so forth. And it's another period that I really, really like. I have a massive soft spot for, or should it be hard spot, for the, soft spot seems wrong in terms of punk, for the punk movement and the kind of, you know, the rising up against corruption and government, you know, whatever. Maybe we could do some more of that now. And Anthony Quinn's first novel, I think, was Curtain Call, which I read. Yes, it was, and there was a couple of follow-ups to that. Dealt really, really well with the theatre world of, I think it was the 30s or the 40s. I do forgive my memory. So I know that Anthony Quinn is really good at evoking era. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing this. And that's a beautiful cover, isn't it? It reminds me a little bit of the TV programme that used to be on in the UK, London's Burning, which was about a fire, so the fire service, which used to be on, I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, so a bit of nostalgia there. What else we got? Okay, this is a totally random buy that I've heard of loads and don't really know what it's about, but for some reason I thought, I want that. And this is Betty Smith's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which I'm just going to read some of the blurb to you because I'm not au fait enough to tell you exactly what it's about. It's a poignant and deeply understanding story of childhood and family relationships. The Nolans lived in the Williamsburg slums of Brooklyn from 1902 until 1919. Their daughter Francie and their son Neely knew more than their fair share of the privations and sufferings that are the lot of the great city's poor. Okay, so it feels like a bit of a coming-of-age story that also touches on themes of poverty, gentrification, I guess, and also the Depression, or the roots of the Depression, I suppose. And again, you know, as Anthony Quinn does really well with era, from what I understand, this does really well with location and you know, a real sense of place, and apparently it is very much a classic. It says in the best-selling tradition of Angela's Ashes, which makes me slightly nervous because that's very sad and very sort of like, oof. But I am going to get to this at some point. I don't know when I'm going to get to this, but I knew I wanted a copy. So there we go. What else we got? It's overwhelming. Oh, this, lovely. Now, the story about this, the reason I bought some of these was because, in fact, the next two, if I'm honest, because there is a shop in Affleck's Palace, which is in Manchester, which used to be an underground kind of market, now slightly less underground and cheap, but still a very cool place for city's alternative communities, mostly young people, I'm not going to lie. But they have there on the third floor the Gay Pride shop, which is a LGBTQIA plus kind of superstore, if you will, but not superstore because it's not overly corporate or owned. It's an independent business, and they sell everything from like flags to jewelry to, you know, badges, but they've also recently got a queer kind of library. Well, it's a bookshop with loads of books that are really hard to get hold of, or maybe are not something that are going to be sold in the mainstream chain bookstores. So I went in there to have a look around, and I ended up picking up a copy of In Their Shoes by Jamie Windust, which is a it's basically, I don't want to say self-help, but I think it's more a sort of collection of thoughts, feelings, and reflections on being non-binary and what it means to live between, you know, the sort of sometimes rigidly enforced male-female dichotomy, if you will. It's probably not the correct word, but that's okay. And, you know, as a person who considers himself non-binary, albeit without a sort of massive backlog of reading about that. I really want to read other people's stories about how they identify and what it means to them. So I think this is going to be great. And Jamie Windust is quite a well-known person who they are quite a public-facing, non-binary person, so I'm really interested to see what they have to say. On that note, I also picked up a copy of Alex Reeve's The House on Half Moon Street, which is a detective novel set in the Victorian era. It's catnip to me, catnip. With the featuring, I believe our protagonist is either a mortuary or hospital attendant or something who becomes involved in the cases. There are, I think there's about 3 or 4 books in this series so far, but this is the first one. I was really good. I held myself back from buying more than one. But our protagonist, Leo Stanhope, was born Charlotte, the daughter of a respectable reverend, but knew he was meant to be a man. So I'm really, really interested to interrogate transgender identity, so on and so forth, in a non-traditional, like, contemporary setting, as it were, with the added thingy of crime and, you know, that wonderful, I say wonderful, that intriguing era of the Victorian times in London. I'm assuming it's London, or it could just as well be anywhere else. No, it is London in 1880, yes. Okay, so I'm very, very interested in that, and what a great protagonist as well. Moving on. Oh, this is purely for fun, this is great. I bought this because it was kind of advertised as Buffy meets, like, the sort of post-Brat Pack kind of teen horror movies. This is called The Last Girl by Goldy Moldavsky. Sorry, forgive me there. And it's apparently perfect for fans of Pretty Little Liars. It's a heart-pounding thriller that grabs you by the throat. That was blurbed by Kat Ellis, who wrote Harrow Lake, which I really liked. So this is billed as YA, and it's about new girl, Rachel Chavez, who turns to horror movies for comfort, preferring them to the rich kids of a fancy New York high school. But then she's recruited by the Mary Shelley Club, which I believe is the title in America, the Mary Shelley Club. And it's terrifying fear tests, elaborate pranks inspired by urban legends and horror movies. So I'm really interested to see what this is about. I imagine it's going to be fairly easy to read. That's not a critique. What I'd call a bedtime book. But also, again, that kind of folklore, urban legend storytelling, mythological storytelling is catnip to me. So I'm really, really interested to dive into this. We're nearly there now, I think. Good. This one I've definitely talked about and previewed. This is Akala's first book. I love Akala. I think he's wonderful. And this is the first in a series, apparently, set in Shakespearean times. It's called The Dark Lady, and I believe inspired by the imagery of the Dark Lady in Shakespeare's sonnets. So it says, Henry is an orphan, an outsider, a thief. He is also a 15-year-old invested with magical powers. This first novel from the amazing imagination of Akala will glue you to your seat as you are hurled into a time when London stank. It still does. And boys like Henry were forced to find their own route through the tangled streets and out the other side. So I think this is adventure, kind of YA, mystery, kind of, but also fantasy. And again, I'm very intrigued to see what Akala does in this medium, because I think the work he does as a speaker and a writer and also an artist in music, is wonderful. So I think this sounds great. What could be a great introduction for younger people as well, who are maybe not experiencing the Shakespearean world as it would be most helpful. Cool. On that note of Shakespeare, I got a second-hand copy of this. This is about £2 on eBay, which is called That Way Madness Lies, Shakespeare Reimagined. And it's edited by Dahlia Adler. And this is basically a series of contemporary short retellings of, it says, Shakespeare's most notable works. I would argue that they're all notable because they're not infinite. But these are separated into the comedies, the tragedies, sonnets, and the late romances. And they're just basically retellings of the great Shakespearean stories, which, you know, again, I'm really, really into. I love Shakespeare. And I also really like to see the meaning, the themes, these so-called universal things put into a contemporary context, because I think they can really help to unlock that sense of timeless storytelling. Books and Lala, who I follow on here, read this, subscribe to on here, sorry, read this and said it was great. So I kind of trust her, and I thought it's a great price for a secondhand recycled book. Okay, winding up now. This one I've definitely previewed before on the channel, I believe in an anticipated book, so I might have just chatted about it, I don't know. This is called The Performance, and it's by Claire Thomas, and it's an Aussie novel, which I didn't notice until I started properly doing Booktube, how many Aussie releases are not, like, released in the UK or not readily available. This one's set in Melbourne, and it says, as bushfires rage outside the city, 3 women watch a performance of a Beckett play. Love Samuel Beckett. Margot is a successful professor. Ivy is a philanthropist. Summer is a young theatre usher. As the performance unfolds, so does each woman's story. Now, I love this kind of storytelling where it's like 3 or 4 or even several overlapping plot points that coalesce in a very, very much in the style of like Crash, stuff like that. And obviously with the theatre as a sort of instigating event, you know, it's something I'm very into because obviously it's my job. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this. It smells amazing. It's beautifully designed. So all in all, that really adds up well. Last couple now, we have another whim purchase. When the bookshop started reopening again, I went in to pick something up that I'd ordered for work, and I wanted to get the points on my Waterstones card, I'm not gonna lie. So I wanted to make up the price into multiples of 10. So I picked up this, The Others Gold by Elizabeth Ames, or Ames, I assume Ames, which is about 4 women, Lainey, Margaret, Ji-sun, and Alice, who find themselves sharing a dorm in freshman year of college. And their lives become braided together both at college and into adulthood. As young mothers, their friendships must endure the burden of unspoken secrets, threats from the dark forest of their childhood and beyond, for each of them will make a terrible mistake. Now, I'm really, really interested, again, similar to The Performance, but also that kind of combined with this kind of thriller, secretive thing really, really intrigues me. And, you know, I love reading about particularly female friendships and, you know, sort of like lifelong relationships that are beset by secrets and, you know, hidden pasts. And it's got some lovely reviews as well. It's blurbed by Jasmine Ward, who wrote Sing Unburied Sing, which is a wonderful novel. So I think not finally, but almost. This is Albertine Sarrazin's Astragal. That makes me think of Astroglide, you know, the lubricant. Awkward. It's introduced by Patti Smith. As alive as a Godard movie, this lost classic of 60s French literature is back. So this is about... Oh, so the blurb actually brings in why Patti Smith introduces it. It says, at the age of 21, Patti Smith walked into a bookshop in Greenwich Village, spent her last 99 cents on a novel that would change her life forever. And this is written from a prison cell, and it's a semi-autobiographical novel, a bewitching and timeless tale of youthful rebellion and romance. It tells the story of Anne, a young woman who breaks her ankle in a daring escape from prison. She's picked up by a motorcyclist who's also on the run. As they travel together, they fall in love and do whatever they can to survive. This is a relatively short book, and it's these Serpent's Tail Classic editions, which I really love. I think I read was it a Neil Bartlett one? Ready to Catch Him When He Falls, that was in this kind of series. I don't know if there's a list. There's not, that's helpful. I also read Nella Larson's Passing in this format, and I just really love it. I love these pop art covers. And, you know, again, as with the Aussie literature, French literature is something I'm not overly familiar with. So, but this sounds very punk, very sort of my kind of vibe. And, okay, yeah, last two now. So, last but one is Mary Kingsley's Travels in West Africa, which is about a sort of personal memoir, I guess, set in 1983, where Mary Kingsley, who took a steamer to West Africa, she'd previously been a single Victorian woman with a life spent mainly at home. And when her parents die, she has a thirst to explore. Now, I'm fully anticipating that this is going to be entirely problematic in terms of, you know, the themes of colonialism and empire and stuff, and the kind of, you know, terrible way that Britain just planted its Union Jack everywhere in the world and claimed it, which is awful, obviously. But I am doing a project at the moment that deals with sort of colonial and post-colonial themes. So I wanted to pick this up because I wanted to know how Victorian British people actually conceptualized countries that they visited in Africa, and what that looked like, because I think it's important to understand what they thought. Let's put that brightness up a bit. Yeah. What they thought, and, you know, as part of that overall jigsaw, how they were actually approaching their investigations of the continent. And, you know, so I'm fully expecting that parts of this will be very, very cringy and very sort of difficult. Although I could be doing her a disservice, I don't know. I don't want to say that without quantifying it. But I think it's important to know what was being said, written and understood at the time before we start to dissect why colonialism was wrong, and how we can go about making kind of collective reparations for that. Cool. So finally, I've picked up at last. I've wanted this for ages, and I just bit the bullet because I've been reading sort of work-related books on the way to work, on the trains in the morning, which really sort of centres my head. This is part of Methuen Drama's Theatre Makers series, and it's a working diary by Simon Stevens. This series does this a lot. It collaborates with various artists in theatre, from actors to makers to writers to movement directors, whatever, and they keep diaries of their processes, basically, and, you know, having a similar process. Well, everybody who works in theatre has a similar process, I suppose, in terms of what they have to do, but although everybody's different. This is Simon Stevens. He's a wonderful playwright, one of my faves, writes often about Manchester and the Northwest, and this is his diary of creating, a new play for the Royal Court, a Chekhov translation for the Young Vic, and the Broadway transfer of his adaptation of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I just really like to see how people compartmentalize, or don't, their working projects, and so I'm really, really looking forward to getting stuck into this. It's written very much like a diary, and it's one of them dip in, dip out books, which I do really appreciate, especially at this time. So that's my haul. Let me know what you thought. Anything in there that intrigues you? Anything you think, hey, that's not for me? Because that's okay, isn't it? We're all different. We all have different tastes and needs, and that's really important. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. Let me know what you've hauled recently. Let me know what you want to haul. Let me know what you would never haul in a million years. But for now, put your library card somewhere safe and waterproof, because those April showers that have segued into May are definitely going to get you. Don't forget, there's still time to sign up for our digital book club. First meeting is 24th of May. Full details in the description, and also you can check on my videos for a link to the book that we'll be working on reading first. In the meantime, do take absolutely the best care of yourself. Treat yourself as well as you would treat the people you care most about in the world. Be safe, be sure, and stay dry and warm. All right, much love to you all. Mwah.